This past Saturday was UFC 305, Dricus Du Plessis versus Israel Adesanya, and there was a lot to learn from this massive pay-per-view, and I am going to go through my top 3 takeaways from UFC 305. I'm going to start with a couple honorable mentions, then I'm going to get into my actual list, going from 3 to 1, 1 being my biggest takeaway from the card. Let's start off with my first honorable mention. And this is something that has driven me nuts forever, but I've never had an opportunity to sneak it into a video. So this is the perfect opportunity to sneak it into a video. Stop talking about Drake's bets. Let me explain to you guys what is going on with Drake's bets. And I don't understand why people don't know this. Drake has a massive partnership deal with the company that he advertises for. I'm not even going to say their name because I'm not giving them any promotion. So he's essentially gambling with house money, okay? He has reportedly up to $100 million a year deal with them. And there's some speculation that he may even be a part owner of the company. So he's gambling with house money, okay? He posts these crazy bets online, so then everyone shares the image of it, which is a free advertisement for the company when he's really not even actually betting. So please, guys, I beg of you. I beg of you, stop sharing Drake's bets. Stop sharing them. It wouldn't even shock me. I don't know if it applies to this past weekend, but it wouldn't even shock me if they tell him who to bet on to try to drive action in that direction, depending on what's going on behind the scenes. I don't know about all the elaborate, how odds makers necessarily, make their lines, but it would not shock me. So please stop sharing it. You're just part of a scheme, a money-making scheme for a gambling company. Next honorable mention, and that is that Kai Kara-France is the #1 contender and should fight Alexandre Pantoja next. He brutalized Steve Erceg. He arguably beat Amir Albazi. I thought it was a close fight, but I thought that Kai Kara-France probably should have got the nod there. And he went out there first round KO. KO'd Steve Erceg, who some people actually even thought beat Pantoja in his last fight. And let me just say this. I think Kai Kara-France is the #1 contender, but not only that, I would pick him easily to beat Pantoja. Pantoja's been in so many wars. Pantoja relies on his grappling. Pantoja seems like he's slowing down. It's a matter of time. And I think Kai Kara-France, his defensive ability in terms of defending takedowns and his striking and his power, I think if anyone's going to go out there and beat Alexandre Pantoja, it'll be Kai Kara-France. I mean, he KO'd Steve Erceg badly. By the way, Steve Erceg was a bit overrated, because he beat a couple decent guys and made it look easy coming in from, outside the UFC on short notice. So, I think he's a bit overrated, but I still think Steve Erceg's very good. And Kai Kara-France was arguably in line, kind of got robbed of that shot because of the fact that he lost to Amir Albazi. But right now, the UFC just cut Muhammad Mokaev, who should have been #1 contender. So give Kai Kara-France a flyweight title shot. I believe he will become champion. Unfortunately, I don't think he's going to get the shot because it looks like they're going to do Alexandre Pantoja versus Kai Asakara, who just got recently signed by the UFC. That looks like what it's going to be next, maybe in November. But I think Kai Kara-France should be in line, and I think he will win the title. I think he would defeat Alexandre Pantoja. Great win from Kai Kara-France at UFC 305. Last honorable mention. And by the way, guys, let me know in the comments, what are your biggest takeaways from UFC 305? I'm genuinely curious. But last honorable mention, and I thought about making a dedicated video on this, but, is it really that big of news? But that is that Dan Hooker cheated to win against Mateusz Gamrot, okay? And I'm not talking about the fence grabs. Dan Hooker used PEDs to defeat Mateusz Gamrot, and potentially the win could be overturned because there is a source who saw somebody dropping off EPO at Dan Hooker's hotel room, and you guys know what they say, where there's smoke, there's fire. He thought he could, show up to Australia and cheat. And all I have to say is, prove me wrong. Bet you can't. I have no evidence to support this claim. I'm just pulling shit out of my ass. But yeah, Dan Hooker definitely cheated. I mean, this career resurgence is definitely reliant on PEDs. And now we have a source saying they saw a nurse dropping off EPO for injection into Dan Hooker's ass cheeks. And that is why he was able to defeat Mateusz Gamrot. Now, realistically, guys, I'm kidding around. I almost made a full satire video on this, but I didn't want people to think, oh, damn, Joey has a whole title and thumbnail and he's putting out fake information, because I would wait till the end of the video. I was going to go through all the things that he said in the past. But if you guys don't understand this, Dan Hooker was so salty when Islam Makhachev defeated Alexander Volkanovski that he went on this rant saying that Islam was a cheater and there would be a smoking gun and where there's smoke, there's fire, and that he saw this, he saw that. And I covered this extensively at the time. And I said, look, there's never going to ever be any evidence to prove such claims. There's going to be not a shred of evidence. And people ran with it and ran with it and ran with it just because Dan Hooker made up a claim. Because somebody told him this. Could literally have been a disgruntled fan. And he just ran with this and tried to tarnish a man's name just because he was salty that his teammate lost or his friend lost. I'm not even sure if they're 100% teammates. I don't think Volkanovski trains full-time at CKB, but either way, one of his friends lost. So he had to say, oh, well, he had an IV and he cheated. So I wanted to make that claim here. If you guys want to, spread that around on social media. I know that sounds crazy, me asking you to spread. But look, I'm just telling you what a source told me. A source told me this. I have no evidence to push the claim, but post on social media about how Dan Hooker cheated to beat Mateusz Gamrot. The win should be overturned. It should be overturned. All right, let's get into my actual honorable mentions. And let's start off with number 3. And this honestly should be higher on the list, but I don't know. I kind of struggle compiling in which order to go in. But number 3, we need more transparency in judging because we had some horrendous scorecards. And thank God we didn't have any really super close fights because I could only imagine what the judging would look like. Let's go through some of these scorecards because they're absolutely egregious. So let's start off with the least egregious scorecard of the night, and that is the main event, Du Plessis Adesanya. Now, I know a lot of people are going to disagree with me here. I rewatched it twice. I don't know how you can score round 1 for Dricus Du Plessis, but I guess it's kind of within the margin of error. It was competitive, so if it was just this by itself, I wouldn't complain. You know, Charlie Keach and Ben Cartilage, or not Ben Cartilage, sorry. It was Charlie Keach who scored round 1 for Dricus Du Plessis. And then the other judge who had it for Du Plessis had 2 and 3. I don't know how you score round 3 for Du Plessis either. So 2 different judges. You know, 3 I think is really egregious, to be quite honest. 3 for Dricus, but I mean, I don't know. At least, look, it's hard because I talk about judging and I kind of grade it on a scale because it's so bad. Like, this isn't even that bad. You know, the judging is so bad that this isn't even that bad. And that's not even the worst scorecards of the night. I mean, that scorecard didn't matter. There was a finish, and also it wasn't like crazy egregious. You know, they were competitive rounds. 1 and 3 were pretty competitive. So I could understand, depending on where you're seated and the angles that you see, maybe you could have scored it, and people had scores all over the place for the fight anyway. So let's forget about that one. Let's go to another one. Okay, we'll save the most egregious for last. The next one I want to talk about is Song Kenan versus Ricky Glenn. I didn't even remember this like in real time, like later on when the worst one was read. But one of the judges, and I don't know how this is possible, it's Howie Booth. Howie Booth, remember the name, scored round 1 for Ricky Glenn. Ricky Glenn got absolutely dominated from start to finish. How did you score round 1? I mean, he landed like 1 shot and got a takedown in round 1. Nothing else. Got beat up the entire time. I don't know how you score round 1 for Ricky Glenn. Absolutely atrocious scorecard, okay? And that's Howie Booth scoring a round for Ricky Glenn against Kenan Song. Completely egregious, but that's not the worst scorecard of the night. And this is where it really comes into we need some type of transparency. We need some type of explanation. I need to know more about this, okay? Because the worst scorecard of the night was Tai Tuivasa versus Jairzinho Rozenstruik. Howie Booth took a fight where, I'm not kidding, Jairzinho Rozenstruik dominated from start to finish. Complete and utter domination. The rounds were not close. They weren't all that competitive, to be quite honest. It was a one-sided beatdown where occasionally Tai Tuivasa would land a shot or 2. Howie Booth didn't just give 1 round. He gave all 3 rounds to Tai Tuivasa. When I heard this in real time, I thought for sure he must have thought that Tai Tuivasa was the black guy. That's what I thought. This has to be a mistake. Apparently, this is not a mistake. This is what he thought. There is no explanation for scoring it for Tai Tuivasa other than some type of, I don't even know, psychedelic drug, or something to do with gambling, or something to do with extreme hometown bias. But that's not the worst thing. I think Howie Booth really covered. He really covered for someone tonight, or for UFC 305, because I didn't even realize it. I heard 30-27 Tai Tuivasa, and my brain just melted in my head. But we also have Charlie Keach, who scored round 1 for Tai Tuivasa. Now, ultimately, he scored 2 and 3 for Jairzinho, but we were 1 round away from Tai Tuivasa winning the fight. If Charlie Keach would have messed up one other round, Tai Tuivasa would have got a win in a fight that he got dominated in for 3 rounds from start to finish. What the fuck is going on? I've been sitting on this for 48 hours. I don't know how this is possible. Howie Booth was removed from his duties. Charlie Keach should have been removed from his duties as well. I mean, to score that, and then he gets to score the main event, round 1 for Tai Tuivasa? That's crazy. That is outright crazy. But Howie Booth, to sit there and watch a grown man be dominated for 3 rounds and say that grown man in Tai Tuivasa won every single round, he needs his ass whooped. He absolutely needs his ass. I mean, it would be a real shame if someone caught Howie Booth coming out of a restaurant and sucker punched him. I definitely would not encourage that. There should be no violence against anyone. But I'm just saying it would be a real shame. This is horrendous. This is horrendous. This is dirty. This is suspicious. This needs to be investigated. And we need more transparency. We truly need more transparency, because I need to know why. There's no way I can live on the rest of my life not knowing what the fuck Howie Booth was looking at. This shit's been driving me nuts. I'm like, no, someone's got to come out and say, oh, he just marked down on the wrong side. We didn't realize it because a lot of moving parts. And 30-27 for Taco Bell Tuivasa? What the fuck? Howie Booth, I wish Howie Booth was watching this right now. You're a bitch, Howie Booth. Do your job better, you incompetent piece of shit. And I don't care. I don't care. It's not good to wish people to be fired or lose their incomes. I typically won't do that. You know, I know a lot of people used to like the cuts videos and say, you're wishing for them to... No. I'm talking about the barrier of entry. This guy needs to be fired. I wouldn't trust this dude to squirt out porta potties, okay? He'd fuck it up somehow. So, we need more transparency. We need answers. We can't just sit around and, you know, allow Howie Booth to get away with this and not have some type of repercussion. So, disgusting and despicable scorecard from Howie Booth and Charlie Keach, to be quite honest. Charlie Keach should be highlighted more for scoring round 1 for Tai Tuivasa as well. Absolute disgrace in the judging. And thank God we didn't end up having any robberies at 305. Because this judging, I don't ever want to see another event go to Perth ever again with that commission. It's a complete disgrace. Now, moving on to my second takeaway, or my number 2 takeaway from UFC 305. And that is, look, it's crazy to say this, but Israel Adesanya will never be UFC middleweight champion again. And this is coming from someone who was super confident going into the fight. I know a lot of people are like, Joey, why are you saying Dricus is good now? And why are you saying this now? Well, you know what normal, rational human beings do? When they see something that could change their opinion, instead of making up excuses, they change their opinion to fit with reality. And the reality is, as good as Israel Adesanya looked on Saturday night, okay, and I think he looked good. Okay, I know some people were saying he's kind of washed or he looked bad or whatever. I think that Israel looked very good on Saturday, and he still lost. It still wasn't enough. And I thought he was up on the scorecards. And I was 90% sure he was going to win halfway through that 4th round. Dricus Du Plessis finds a way to pull it off. He submits him via 4th round rear naked choke. And at this point, what I'll say is, this was Israel's best chance to defeat Dricus. I don't think another year and another 2 or 3 wins, and then maybe he gets another shot. Maybe Dricus is still the champion. I don't think he gets back there, and I don't think he wins. Look, I think Dricus is on the trajectory of going up in the world and improving in his skill and getting better and heading more towards his prime if he's not already. And Israel's already reached that peak, and he's already started to come down. I already don't believe that was this full 100% prime. I don't think he's completely washed up, or, you know, I'm not trying to take away anything from the win. Obviously, I said Israel Adesanya looked amazing. You know, if they ran it back next week, I think he would have a chance. But what I'm trying to say is, this was Israel's best opportunity to beat Dricus. It was now or never. He lost. He got choked out. I don't think he ever comes back and gets a title win again. You know, I know some people probably already know that, but at 35 years old, heading towards 36, The middleweight division is getting more skilled, it seems. I mean, someone could dethrone Dricus, who maybe is a better style matchup for Israel Adesanya. But look, going into this fight, and even now thinking about it, I still think Dricus, is one of the easier matchups for Israel Adesanya, and he still lost because Dricus is just a pure physical specimen, and his heart is unmatched, and I really think that's what wins him a lot of fights. His heart and determination. He is willing to die out there, 100%, and I just don't think Israel is going to get any better than he already is. If he does, it's just going to be marginal, and I think Dricus is only going to get better. And I think Adesanya is going to slow down. And unfortunately for Israel Adesanya, I do not believe he ever captures a UFC title ever again. I don't think this is a hot take by any means, but it is crazy thinking about that. He's in a title fight. He was a champion for a long time. I know he lost to Pereira, but he gained it right back. It's crazy that it seems as if, and I'm not saying just necessarily as champion, but in general, reigning at the top of the division, Israel Adesanya's era is over. It's gone. It's now the Dricus Du Plessis era. And we're going to see who can beat Dricus Du Plessis coming in the future. But ultimately, I don't think Adesanya can get the belt back. I mean, he could get one win. If he gets a big, spectacular win against a top-ranked guy, I think the UFC would give him another opportunity. It seems like Dricus wants to fight Adesanya in Africa, at least his coach does. And I don't think it's crazy to try to sell a rematch at some point in time, but right now, it's nowhere close. Israel's going to have to get a win or two at least to deserve it. And I just, even if he is able to get 2 wins over top-ranked guys, is he going to be able to do that and then go on get another win against Dricus Du Plessis, who's gotten better since the last time? I don't think so. So my number 2 takeaway is that Israel Adesanya will never be champion again. And I'll add this one to the number 2. Israel Adesanya is one of the most overhated champions of all time that he does not deserve. I understand he's cringy. I understand he's not necessarily likable. People think I'm in love with the guy just because I defend him, because people make up all these weird narratives. But this dude was a champion who would fight anyone and everyone and would stay super active, never ducked a soul. So, and also on top of that, he's one of the greatest of all times at middleweight. I think he's second behind Anderson Silva, but he's still one of the GOATs of the middleweight division, and people are going to miss him when he's gone. Even the people who hate him. If he fights another fight and let's say he loses and he retires, or he fights another fight and gets a win and says, you know what, I don't have the motivation anymore, I'm going to hang it up. You will miss him when he's gone. So it's just ridiculous, the level of hate that Israel Adesanya has gotten. Even after the fight, people are like, oh, well, if he would have won, he would have been so disrespectful. When has he ever been disrespectful after a fight? Oh, he celebrated after beating Pereira. Everyone celebrates in the immediate aftermath. There was nothing but respect afterwards. So, the Adesanya haters will make up any fake narrative possible to hate on the guy, even when you're literally living in a fantasy world of, if this happened, this would have happened, or this happened, that would have happened. They showed each other respect. If you're downgrading his skill level as well, you're just making Dricus' win look bad, which I think is crazy. But ultimately, Adesanya will never be champion again, but he is one of the most overhated, and I think we will all miss him when he's gone, even whether you like him or hate him. I think we'll all miss him when he's gone. Moving on to my number 1 takeaway, and I'm wondering if at some point this is going to change, but this is how I feel about it right now, and that is that Dricus Du Plessis is unbeatable. Unbeatable. I'm not picking anyone to beat Dricus. I don't care if it's, Sean Strickland, the crybaby Sean Strickland. I don't care if it's, Adesanya. I don't care if it's Hamzat. I don't care if it's Robert Whittaker. I don't care if it's Alex Pereira. I don't care if it's Magomed Ankalaev. I don't care if it's Tom Aspinall, John Jones, or Tom Aspinall and John Jones at the same time. Dricus Du Plessis, he looks sloppy. He looks horrible, to be quite honest. As crazy as that sounds, I know people are going to get butthurt about that, but it's just my honest opinion. This dude goes out there with the will and determination of a guy who's ready to die at any point in time. He looked exhausted. He was slow to get up. He pulled a Herbert Burns in the 4th round, like 1 minute before he got the finish. He was slow getting up. I believe that was the 4th round. I thought he was done. This dude just knows in the back of his mind, this is my life on the line here. I'm going to fight like I'm going to die if I lose. And I love that mentality. I absolutely love that mentality. And I just think with his durability, his physicality, unless his chin goes, I genuinely just don't see him losing. I mean, like, even Pereira was getting ragdolled by Israel Adesanya. What do you think Dricus is going to do to him? If Pereira can't put him out in the first minute, Dricus is going to ragdoll him to the ground and sub him. And I'm confident in that, to be quite honest. I know people think I'm a Pereira hater too, but I'm confident in that. Khamzat, I think Khamzat is actually underrated, and I think Khamzat would have a decent chance. But listen, Khamzat, his cardio's kind of come into question because of the way he's fought in his last few fights has not been conducive to kind of conserving your gas tank. But look, if we get into a dogfight, which Khamzat likes to get into, and I'm fantasizing about a Du Plessis-Khamzat fight in South Africa. Look, if it gets down to it, you got to go Dricus Du Plessis. He finds a way to pull it off each and every time. If I'm picking someone to ride out with me and fight to the death and go to war, I'm picking Dricus Du Plessis over every single other person. Until his chin goes, I think he's unbeatable. I think he's absolutely unbeatable. I mean, who beats him? It's not going to be soy boy Sean Strickland, beta male, crybaby bitch. I made an entire video about how he's trying to dictate circumstances for the next title fight, and he's crying about racism. If you want to check out that video, I'll link it down in the description as well as the end cards. But yeah, it's not going to be Sean Strickland. Sean Strickland's going to be sobbing before the fight even happens. DM and Dricus begging for mercy. I think Dricus goes out there and finishes Strickland in a rematch. So it's going to be very interesting to see how long the Dricus Du Plessis era lasts, because the only way I think he loses is if he gets finished, and that requires his chin to be gone. And there's not a lot of massive power punchers in the division. I used to think Jared Cannonier's a nightmare matchup for him, and I still think Jared is a kind of bad stylistic matchup for him, but Jared's on his way out. He just got finished by Imavov. His grappling isn't that great. I think Dricus beats him as well. So there's not that one big power puncher. Even Nasruddin Imavov, who has decent power and really good striking, he's been held up against the cage by Sean Strickland. What's Dricus going to do to him? So at this point, my number one takeaway is Dricus is unbeatable. I don't see anyone in the division who currently beats him. The last time I remember saying something like this, long before the channel, is I remember when John Jones defeated Lyoto Machida. The perception at the time was John Jones was really good, but some people thought Lyoto could beat him. I thought Lyoto could beat him. And I remember when he absolutely destroyed Lyoto Machida, I said, look, I am never picking against John Jones ever again. And I don't believe I have. I think John Jones would actually wreck Tom Aspinall, as crazy as that sounds right now and as unpopular as that is to say. I don't think anyone beats Dricus Du Plessis. Maybe it'll change. Maybe it'll fade. Maybe it's recency bias. But right now, I'm picking Dricus Du Plessis over everybody in the division. Let me know what you guys think about my takeaways. Are any of them off? Did I miss anything that should have been on the list? Let me know what you guys think. Like the video, subscribe to the channel, and thank you so much for watching.